So hey everybody, this is Brian. Just before we get started here, I wanted to mention somebody by the name of Sebastian gave us an email, said that he'd heard about our podcast and wanted to give our listeners a deal on tickets to Hack in the Box Amsterdam, which is occurring from 23 May 2016 to 27th of May 2016. It's 3 days of training, 2 days of speakers and tracks from people like Morgan Marquis-Bois and Sophie D'Antoine from Trail of Bits. If you are interested in going to Hack in the Box Amsterdam, when you're going to buy your tickets and you check out, enter the code BRAKESEC, BRAKESEC, and that'll get you 10% off on the cost of a ticket. So, please take advantage of that. And we thank Sebastian and all of his people over there at Hack in the Box Amsterdam. And that's all I wanted to say. So, on to the podcast. This is Breaking Down Security, and I'm Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
What's up, Mr. Brake?
Not much. I mean, we've had a couple of very interesting podcasts in the last few weeks, and this one's going to be no exception. This week we've invited Ben Caudill on. It is Caudill, right?
Caudill, right? Yep.
Okay, good. I ruined the last name very poorly. So, welcome, Ben, to Breaking Down Security. This has been a long time coming. We've been trying to get you on since Black Hat and DEF CON last year sometime.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, first, we like to talk about people's superhero origin stories. So, how did you get to where you are today?
I guess depending on how far back you go. I kind of fell into it. I mean, this was something I was really passionate about. I was really passionate about computers and network and security as a whole for a long time. My degree, my education was in something entirely different, and I was almost to graduation and realized this wasn't really something I was wanting to do 9 to 5. And kind of, I think like a year from graduation, kind of turned it on its head and did a lot of self-study and kind of formalized some of my credentials and my capabilities, and ended up getting a job at Boeing. So talked my way in there, and that's kind of the foot in the door.
Okay. All right. So you, there's a Wired article that you were involved in quite a bit here. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about it. There's an application called Secret, which is about anonymous messaging, anonymous sharing, like BitTorrent, but not so BitTorrenty.
Yeah, well, so it's I like to say it's like an anonymous social network. So Secret or Secretly, the idea was that you and I and 1,000 other people all connect to one another without actually knowing who we're directly connected to, other than we're all friends. So the idea is you as a user, as a Secretly user, submit your contacts list or upload your contacts list as part of creating your account. And when it uploads your contacts, it takes all that behind the scenes and essentially connects people with only kind of the metrics of who you're connected to, rather than the actual people you're connected to, as with Facebook, Twitter, or anywhere else. So you'll have kind of degrees of connections where you can share messages. First degree, obviously, people that you're directly connected to, people that you know. Second degree, kind of friends of friends, and then there's like that everybody else space. So the idea was that you could share information. You could post anonymously, knowing that other people that you're talking to, friends, without actually ever giving away your identity, which is an interesting idea, just from kind of a security and private and kind of anonymity space, that you could have something like that, kind of a mix between like the security virtues or the anonymity virtues of the internet, right? Just posting out there on YouTube or on some bulletin board, and at the same time getting some real feedback or some real discussion within your own social circle. So it was really interesting. There was everything from people talking about their infidelity to the open discussions about what they make at Google. So interesting platform.
Okay, and so if I know you directly, I would share my birthday, my location, my check-ins, that kind of thing. Whereas somebody who is in the second ring or the third ring, or I don't know, degrees of separation, like with Kevin Bacon or whatever,
Sure.
you would get less information.
Well, yeah. So you don't actually get any information about your contacts. You just get that you're either connected to them, it's a friend of a friend, or just like some stranger out there. So a good example would be like I post something, or actually using something from the article here, Kevin Poulsen's example, kind of hacking his account. He said, deep down, I really only liked one Tim Burton film. Edward Scissorhands is the image there in the background. That is something that would come up on my feed if I'm connected to Kevin. It would come up on my feed saying, this is a first degree connection. Someone in your friends group, someone that said this, right? So again, there's a lot of it was especially popular in kind of the Silicon Valley circles. People posting everything from, again, kind of the startup culture and problems that they had to just grossly illegal things that were going on in the industry, to really personal things that you wouldn't want people to associate with you. So again, interesting how people used it. It was like a mix of like a internet bulletin board or like a confessional. It was a weird mix of messages and use cases.
Okay, and so the point is, you and your fellow Google Map manipulator Brian Seeley, another Brian, he spelled
Sure.
his properly, so that's good.
It is, yeah,
Yeah.
proper pronunciation.
Exactly. How are you able to like make it de-anonymize people inside of Secret? How did that go about doing that?
Sure. So there was actually a couple different vulnerabilities that kind of worked into it. But the main piece was that the application, again, kind of going back into application logic flaws, the logic of the application was that when you uploaded your contacts list, so I use an iPhone, I use iOS. When you sign up for an account, it pulls your entire contacts list. It requests your contacts list. You approve it. And it will upload that and associate that with your account, right? And you can always add more friends as you add new friends or new contacts to your phone. It will upload those to the app and associate new friends and so forth. But there's no way to actually add friends through the application itself. They actually did a lot of things right, despite all this. They did a lot of things right in the way that they added friends and kind of made it as difficult as possible to make this sort of thing happen. But it still assumed that the uploaded file was your real friends, right? And so if you take that idea at the core of it, it's just a matter of, I want to have my target, whoever I want to spy on. I know your phone number and your email address, so I want to see what you're saying on secret that you don't want to share with others. I just add you as the only person to my contacts list. I now sign up for a new account with Secretly, and as it pulls my account, now you are the only person that it sees as a first degree contact. So that's kind of the way that worked, is anyone that you see in your first degree contacts is the secrets from your actual friends. Obviously, second degree is theirs and so on. But even in that case, what they did to prevent that was actually having a certain number of people be required to be kind of in your contacts list and actually sharing before it would even show you your first degree contact. It would only show second and beyond. So, for example, Brian with a Y, I have you as my only person in my contacts and my throwaway iOS device. And I sign up for an account and I only have you going up into my account. I'll see all of your connections that are sharing their secrets, but I won't actually see you. So there was a couple of ways around that, but again, essentially it came down to adding dummy accounts, adding dummy emails that were valid accounts in secretly who were actually posting, essentially just bots, adding those bots to my friends list. So I knew everybody in my friends list was a bot except the one person that I wanted to target. Then you upload everyone to secretly, and then anything that comes up that is an actual secret, is tied to that one person. So a pretty, it's a very long way around a number of security protections they put in place, but kind of an interesting use case.
Okay.
It's almost like kind of de-anonymizing Tor, de-anonymizing I2P. When you own a certain number of nodes, it's a mathematical probability or even a certainty that you're going to at some point de-anonymize someone.
Yeah, or if you have 100 friends and 98 of them are fake, you control the data stream, whether it be secure or insecure.
Right, exactly. Which is why, again, I think secretly got obviously some press on both sides of the fence, but I think they actually did a lot of things right here. I think it's just an idea, trying to mesh social networking with anonymity that doesn't really play well together, right? At the point where that you can submit your own friends and make your own connections, so to speak, you can no longer really trust that the user data is valid. I mean, at a very high level of security, there is no way to filter that.
Now we were going to actually have you on about application logic flaws. Is this an example of one of those types of flaws?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is Rhino Security Labs. We see this a lot of times in other areas, everything from again e-commerce platforms to anonymity platforms. But yeah, this is one of the more interesting ones, and obviously one of the ones that we've announced publicly that uses a couple of different kind of logic exploits or logic vulnerabilities to get to a particular end.
How do you discover these logic flaws? Do you purposefully go look at them, or do have you seen them by accident a lot? Like you're testing a web app, and you say, "Wait, how did that happen?" Because you're sitting there playing with it a lot, right? Or do you functionally like draw the way things should flow, and then just say, "Okay, well, what are some ways I can get back to start or get to finish skipping these steps?" I mean, how do you go through it in your mind?
Sure. So there are cases where, especially more complex apps, and this was actually a relatively simple case, simple application, but especially those that are more complex, putting pen to paper and actually trying to visually map out all the different stages and where filtering is and where filtering isn't. That helps a lot. That goes a long ways. Just being able to kind of visually understand how it works and how maybe it thinks it works or it should work, right? And kind of understanding the distinctions there will a lot of times lead to those vulnerabilities again that aren't necessarily technical, like a SQL injection or something similar to that, but kind of breaks the intended functionality of the application to get real data access or some sort of unauthorized access to the application and data.
So are there different kinds of, is there a category, like can you put logic flaws in a specific types of categories? Are there different types of logic flaws?
We actually just had this conversation here internally probably a week ago, and there are, if you look at OWASP actually has a pretty good page on business logic flaws and things like that. Circumventing workflows and things like that, but it's I think the areas between those different categories are pretty gray sometimes. Both the way they describe it and really any other category, because I've seen a number of cases, or maybe even just utilize multiple logic flaws. and kind of secretly in other cases are the same way. We had another case with an e-commerce platform, and everyone uses this example for e-commerce. I've never actually seen it until recently, but we had a custom e-commerce platform where they had the various stages of the checkout process, everything from putting an item in your cart to checking out to paying to having the item shipped to you as separate independent pages, obviously, and they were kind of decoupled from one another in how the logic went from each of the stages. I think it was just like I can't remember all the details there, but I believe it was just like a referrer from each of the pages that at the point where you buy one thing, like you have all the information from each of the stages to just bypass the payment. And now you're shipping items to me. So there's a bunch of really interesting things on like an e-commerce platform, again, that kind of follow that same chain of thought.
Is that like the one where you're buying -1 of something and you can actually buy -1 of something? Is that a lot? That's like the prime example that I always hear when I'm hearing about application security issues.
Yeah, exactly, and that's another kind of logic flaw. Again, at the point you're doing that, now you're sending me money rather than me paying and checking out. Absolutely.
Sure.
What other kind of logic flaws are there? I mean, I'm looking at one list and it says number 1, denial of service. How is that a denial of service attack a logic flaw?
Sure. So I've heard kind of implementations of logic flaws, and I unfortunately I don't have a good example off the top of my head. But I have heard cases of logic flaws that are more denial of service-y, again, depending on what the resource is and how you implement it. But it would be like if I were to implement on an e-commerce platform a similar idea where I am going through this process. If I don't know, if I automate that process and I script a tool to have you just continually send all of the items that you have in your store, right? At a certain point, you're not going to have any more. I mean, hopefully you pick it up by this point, but at a certain point, you're no longer going to have certain items in the store, and at the point where other users can't purchase, that particular pair of shoes or a tent or whatever, then I would say then the service is denied essentially. You can't sell something that is already been allocated to someone else, whether legally or through an exploit like this. So again, I don't have a better example off the top of my head, but I have heard cases where it actually does kind of cause the application to break in some way, that you don't have the resources allocated, or that there's some sort of function that is broken in the application of this logic flaw.
Yeah, I can see the case where, okay, I see that they advertise, I have 250 of this product, right? And then
Sure.
I can go and put 250 of them in my cart and then log out. How long does it stay in my cart? How long does it take for it to get reallocated or put back in the pool? Is it when I log out?
Right. It's actually funny. I actually heard a case where Amazon had exactly this issue way back in the day, where you wouldn't actually have to check out. And it was, I would say, it was as much like a cross-site request forgery issue as logic flaw. But you click on a particular link, it would add a particular item to your cart. And again, you don't actually have to check out. I mean, it was trivial to obviously remove the item from your cart, but at the point where the item that you pick had some sort of like partner arrangement, the vendor or the Amazon partner that was getting their 0.5% or 2% from that item, that was being paid to them when users were adding it to the cart, not when they were checking out.
Nice.
So you could spread this. And again, this is, I guess, more of a cross-site request forgery issue, but you could send this link to 1,000 people. They all click this link, and now you're getting the 2% of the value of each one of those links from Amazon without anyone ever actually purchasing anything.
Okay.
Right.
Well, yeah, that makes
Or-
perfect sense.
Or I could set up fake accounts and then put my stuff as a
A
supplier.
referral. Yeah,
Right,
or you
right,
could do like a
exactly.
referral link or something like that.
Yeah.
Right,
Things like that.
right.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
So I think we should mention that secret the application that you were working on in the Wired article. They have fixed this vulnerability.
Well, yeah. Actually, before the article went out, I reached out to David, CEO of Secretly, and worked through the whole process and how this all kind of put together. There was, again, a couple of different vulnerabilities there that made this possible, but worked with them to get it fixed. So by the time this actually became public, it was already disclosed and fixed by the company.
So how did you? I mean, you guys were you part of a bug bounty, or did the company, reach out to you and say, hey, test my application, or were you guys just poking around on it one day as part of something you guys were using as clients?
No, it was actually something that I had identified just watching a bunch of Netflix one day. I mean, it was an interesting app. It kind of came across my desk from a friend, so to speak. Kind of pointed this out. Hey, look, this kind of new interesting idea. And that was, I mean, I played with it for like 2 seconds, and that was my first thought was, I'm sure there's other protections in place, but what keeps me from just adding one, like one target, one victim to my contacts list, uploading that, which they had encryption and validation of the contacts list. You could just interject that with a proxy, or add it through the application itself, for that matter. So they did have a number of things to prevent this sort of thing from happening. Just arbitrarily adding contacts and essentially turning them into victims. But
okay. Well, I was just wondering how far you went before you reached out to the CEO. Did you actually exploit it and attempt to do anything, or and what was the reaction of the CEO when you reached out to him and said, "Hey, I can do this"? I mean, some CEOs don't like that you're taking his baby and making it really, really ugly.
Yeah. So we reached out. I mean, at the point where we had a proof of concept, essentially,
Okay.
did a very quick proof of concept. This is what we can do, point click exploit, essentially.
Yeah.
And reached out to him at that point, and he didn't believe it at first. He was. I mean, in a situation like that, you're always a little bit nervous, right? I mean, the type of people that approach you are all over the map in terms of intent and level of malice. And so he was very hesitant. We had a couple of, and this is also to say, I have great respect for David. He's a great guy. We had a couple of harsh calls, him and I, because he thought I was kind of coming from a place of malice and ill intent. So there was a little bit of a misunderstanding there. And I think there is, I mean, security, you see this constantly. The misunderstanding or the accident where you end up kind of shooting the messenger, so to speak. It's often so hard to tell the difference, or there is such unease about the process of bug bounties and how you go about disclosing vulnerabilities that that everyone's kind of nervous about anyone that approaches them in that way. So
sure.
It wasn't as smooth as I would have liked, but all's well that ends well.
So did he ask you? I mean, when you gave him this idea, did he ask questions like what were some of the questions? Because I'd imagine he'd be like, why would anybody want to do what you're trying to do?
No, again, actually, I commend him on the number of security protections they had in place. I mean, right off the bat, he said, no, this isn't possible because of X, Y, and Z. And I said, well, I was just going to mention, yes, X, Y, and Z are in place. You don't have anywhere in the app where you can add users or add contacts to your app. Everything is pulled directly from the device. And he says, well, we have an encryption end to end. We have this, that, and the other. And I said, yep, that is true. That made it a lot harder to. I mean, it would have been as easy as intercepting the traffic from your device to the server and just adding new users, right? Things are encrypted end to end and so forth. So that's when we had to kind of take even a further step back and actually add users into iOS. add contacts in that were end up going to be the victims of secretly. So
Sure.
yeah, he was a little dismayed that this was actually possible, despite all the things that they had put in place to try and prevent this sort of thing. But at the point where we kind of understood what was happening and how to prevent it, how to mitigate these issues, and that I'm not trying to extort him or do something malicious with this, he was much more receptive.
Nice.
Things went pretty smoothly.
I see logic flaws as something that you really, you almost need, other than just trying to fuzz an application, for lack of a better term, as far as the flow goes, you really need a human behind it to find these things.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is really why, again, a big part of our own penetration testing process is just trying to identify these sort of things. How is the application mapped out? What are the kind of natural stages for a user? And what are the technical limitations that actually enforce those kind of boundaries and stages at each stage?
Yeah, I can't envision some sort of an automated test that would actually find things like this. Other than, hey, you're well, it depends on where you separate all these other types of vulnerabilities from logic flaws, like bad use of cookies. I mean, that could be considered a logic flaw in some instances, and they could be detectable by automated tools. But it depends on how you use those cookies, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's what makes it such a difficult area to defend against, because the solution really is, stare at it long enough and figure it out, and hope that you did things right.
Yeah, it's actually getting a smart person on the keyboard and just trying to break the thing, and that kind of speaks to why we need good pen testers. To
absolutely.
find these vulnerabilities. You can't just stick a tool there and, once you weed through the false positives, you find a few things and fix them. Well, not necessarily.
Right.
Well, it seems like, a logic scanner or something that would look for, simple logic flaws would be a lot like your cross-site scripting scanners, where they can do fairly okay, but, there's going to be those one-off things like this, like the securely thing, would a logic implementation be able to find? You'd almost have to create a custom scanning mechanism for every application that came out, because every application is different.
Right. Yeah, and the intent and the stages and kind of the normal user behavior is always going to be a bit different. I think the only thing that you could really do wouldn't be so much a scanner on the application, but more of kind of an intelligent, almost user-based, application IDS, web app firewall type implementation, where you just kind of analyze the stages of how a normal user goes through the flow, right? You add items to your cart. Maybe there's even a couple of stages in there. You're looking at other items or something, and then you check out, and then you pay, and then things get shipped to you. If at some point that breaks and you somehow end up at the latter stage without these, some of those other critical stages in the process, then something's probably wrong. Just based on user behavior rather than any sort of strict pattern or strict signature that you would kind of hard code into the application or into the configuration.
Yeah. So Ben, we're doing a podcast for the blue teamers here. If I'm working on in a company that does their own in-house development, how would I go about testing for logic flaws? Is there a specific method or methodology that you use for doing this? I mean, does it require a lot of shoulder surfing with a dev? I mean, what are we looking at when we're doing logic flaws or application testing in particular?
Yeah, so I would say in particular logic flaws, the biggest benefit is really, again, just kind of understanding what normal user behavior is. So when I'm doing a penetration test, it's really a matter of talking to the client and interacting and saying, walk me through how this should work, because I've never used the application. I don't know, I can't even make some of the assumptions that you might make, or vice versa. And I don't know enough about the process and what the user is intending to do with this until you show me. So at the point where they can kind of lay out, this is how it's supposed to happen, stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, and then forks into 5 stages beyond that. Then it's a matter of kind of mapping that out, again, just kind of visually drawing out the different stages and what's involved in each and how they all relate and what should go to one another and what should not. And then really testing the technical capabilities or the technical limitations on those and enforcing that, again, it goes from stage 1, 2, and 3, and then to A, B, and C beyond that, versus stage 1 to stage B, and vice versa. So there's, again, the more visual, I find personally, the more visual you can get with the different stages and the different components of how the application is really mapped out, and is expected user behavior actually matching to forced user behavior. Ideally, those are the same thing. That there is no way to kind of go to certain stages or get access to resources without first going through those other processes. But a lot of times we'll find that isn't necessarily the case.
And you need to use an interception proxy too, right?
Oh yeah, that helps a lot. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any other examples of logic flaws that you found that you can divulge legally?
Yes. Well, I'll say partially divulge. So it was actually another e-commerce platform where the user, let's see here, how do I describe this? Where there's both there's a brick and mortar store with an online component, so you can be in store and online, or either or. And in this particular case, if you sign up in the store or if you sign up to their rewards program, that is kind of decoupled. You sign up with a username and password and all that, but that is actually kind of decoupled from what is on the online portion. So if you then create an account online, let's say Amazon, for example, it's not Amazon, obviously, but go and create an account on Amazon, and it will ask you for your rewards ID or your rewards password. There's nothing to actually enforce that the rewards ID that you give is actually the one that matches to your identity that you signed up in the store, right? So we found this just kind of by testing that process and again, a mix of Burp Suite using a proxy and kind of walking through this e-commerce platform and being able to create new accounts and associate those accounts with in-store users who just haven't associated their ID that they had signed up in store with an online account. So we created a handful of accounts, was able to essentially, wouldn't say quite hijack a user's account, but I guess more spy on a user's account. Everything from the last four of the credit card number to name and address, what they had actually purchased, a number of pretty sensitive items, amount of sensitive information where you, again, can't necessarily purchase anything with their account, but you can identify what they're doing with that account just based on associating your ID, your kind of attacker's ID, with a victim's customer number. So a little more convoluted of an explanation and how that works exactly, but kind of an interesting logic flaw in itself, kind of going back to the e-commerce platform and examples.
So it seems like the majority of logic flaws are popular on e-commerce sites because obviously by exploiting a logic flaw, you get something for it. It's kind of interesting you found a logic flaw in Secretly because, I mean, other than being able to out which friend likes, Edward Scissorhands or, who killed and buried somebody back in 1983, I mean...
It was me.
It was okay. So I mean, I guess for purposes of extortion or blackmail, that would be what you'd want to use on like an anonymization type of program.
Sure.
I don't know if that's how important are logic flaws, because it seems like, I mean, other than some purchase fraud and some possible blackmail, these aren't really widespread, are they?
No. Well. Not really. Actually, so another example here, and I'll use broad strokes because it's unpatched at this point. But we recently found I would say kind of a pseudo logic flaw, application logic flaw mixed with some other things. I'll say that was in a pretty major site, a huge social networking site, that they've kind of denied is really a flaw at all. I got kind of the response that no, this isn't a vulnerability. This is a feature. But again, it's with this sort of thing. I mean, you see something like SQL injection, you can't deny that that's a vulnerability. I see kind of from the bug bounty's perspective, there's a little bit of difficulty here because, I mean, as you mentioned, there's more of a gray area, right? What I see as a vulnerability, what I can exploit, to you, the developer, or you, the business owner, may actually be intended functionality. So yeah, there is a little bit more difficulty in identifying, actually both identifying the vulnerabilities and properly patching them or even disclosing them sometimes.
Okay. So how'd you go about explaining that? Do you just put it in terms of, trying to explain it to the owner, like here's how you'll lose money and come up with a scenario?
Yeah, it's those sort of cases where I try and, I mean, like proof of concepts. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And in fact, like going back to secretly, that's how we got David's attention. Is we had his. I mean, he sent me his phone number. I reached out to him. By the time I had reached out, or actually, I reached out to him, he didn't believe me. I then later texted him his own secret, kind of going through the same process. And then there was a much more concrete discussion. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing in all of InfoSec where nobody believes that it's a real thing, and then you basically have to go prove it to them by exploiting it yourself and showing them. I mean, I've run into this hundreds of times.
Right, which is
it's painful, but it's something we have to do. I mean,
yeah.
What else?
And it's odd because he got unhappy. You said there were some hot phone calls once in a while. One or two hot phone calls. But if he'd have just listened to you in the first place, and maybe you could have sent him a video or something. Maybe that would have been a little better. So he could have actually seen it happening. Or I don't know.
Oh, so to clarify that, I think that was less about the vulnerability itself and more of what is your intention here. I think he got the impression, actually, going back to the hot phone calls, that there was some sort of malicious nature, that I would not report this if I was not trying to, extort him or threaten him or something like that. So again, it's just kind of an attitude or a mentality of kind of the reporting and the bug bounty process that sometimes needs a little work with kind of the general tech community. I've seen this actually a number of times where we've reported bugs. They didn't believe it. We did kind of a proof of concept. Like here's like a working proof of concept. Here's an exploit that makes this work. And then it went immediately from like it skipped all the rational stages and went straight from like, I don't believe you to, okay, we're getting our lawyers involved and we're threatening you. Like, oh my God. So yeah, the whole bug bounty process and disclosing vulnerabilities is, the bane of my existence. Again, David was a great guy to work with, all things said. There was a little bit of static there on the wire, but we've had a number of these cases where just talking to the wrong person on the wrong day, or someone who just doesn't understand, disclosing or saying something like, I've found vulnerabilities in your application. Just that sentence in itself comes off as a threat.
So how did that affect your relationship with him when it was done? I mean, is he now reaching out to you to do additional assessments, or is he telling you all of his startup buddy CEO friends about you? And I mean, how does that work? Or is he just like, okay, thanks, please don't call me again, or I'm going to lawyer up and kick your ass?
Sure, exactly. No, again, I mean, he was great about the entire thing. We still talk to this day, text once in a while. So actually, secretly shut its doors. I want to say maybe, I'm gonna guess maybe 6 months ago. Unrelated to this, but actually shut its doors. Again, I mean, being in the startup world, the I mean, Brian, as we discussed, I think it's like 90% of companies fail in the first 2 years. So that's really unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, as a person ever since then, I mean, he's been a great guy. I have nothing bad to say.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know you are a little pressed for time. You were trying to get somewhere in about a half an hour, 45 minutes. So
Sure.
I just wanted to thank you. And Mr. Betcher, do you have any other like closing thoughts or comments?
Closing thoughts or comments. You put me on the spot, man.
Sorry,
you do this
sir.
all the time.
Well, you always try to do a lessons learned or something. So, responsible disclosure has its thorns.
Well, it does. And go back to that point. When you're trying to convince someone who has a a vested interest in, it's their baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it has a problem, like Brian said, your baby's ugly. And then you have to go the extra mile to prove it to them or to convince them in some way. That's hard, and it's something we all have to deal with in pretty much every area of information security, whether it be logic flaws or what have you. And I guess maybe you can add to this, Benjamin, if it's just to be patient and to try and get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I tend to agree. I think that's a real thorn in the entire security industry, that we kind of generally take that approach and have that, the inclination to shoot the messenger a lot of times.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, Ben, it's been great having you on. I know, like I said, we've been trying to get you on since DEF CON, and it's, you're always welcome to come back on if you've got anything else you'd like to discuss or talk about. I know that maybe we'll have you on talking about some mobile application testing or something in the future. I think we were talking about that, so that'll be good to do.
Sure.
So if people want to get a hold of you or your company, this is we'll give you 15, 20 seconds here to, pimp out your company if you'd like.
Oh man, what an opportunity. Yeah. So
only two people are going to hear this, so
I was going to say, this is for the three of us.
Yeah.
So Rhino Security Labs. I'm the founder and CEO. So we kind of I would say specialize in this sort of very deep dive, very technical penetration testing and security assessment services. So if that's something that you need, your company needs, if you're just looking for some very general security direction and advice, feel free to look me up. Email is benjamin.caudill@rhinosecuritylabs.com. Cool.
Are you on Twitter or anything like that?
I am not. I'm not a tweeter. We do actually have a company account, Rhino Security. I'm also on LinkedIn though as well, so you can find me there if nothing else.
Right on.
How many employees do you have?
We're
dude. That's like asking how much do you make a year, Ben? Why don't we just keep going? Dude?
I personally make no money a year. We're about.
Yeah, I believe that.
There you go. We're about a dozen people now. So we're growing. Also, we are actually hiring. So if you're wanting to get into the space, if you're interested, we're also expanding into managed security. We had a discussion about this earlier. So if you're interested, that's also something we can discuss.
Dude, you gave Brian a project now.
There you go.
No, I've already got more than I can do right now. So, okay. Well, Ben, if you need to go, we'll let you go. We're just going to wrap it up here, and then we'll talk to you again soon. We'll have lunch.
Sure. Sounds good. Thanks again, guys.
Later.
Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
So, how would people get a hold of you, Mr. Betcher, if they wanted to get a hold of you?
You can find me on Twitter @BetcherPwned. Or you can go to my website, imfsecurity.com.
Oh, really? Do you want to do, we're hawking other companies. So you want to do 20, 25 seconds here or something?
No, we'll do that later.
Aren't you guys up doing support plans now or something? 24/7, 365 support?
24/7 consulting.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
that's
Yeah.
what we're doing now.
Okay.
No, just been working on the first version. It's coming around.
Very
Yeah,
nice. Very nice.
we're on the right track. Hopefully we'll be in the same position Ben's in right now in
Very
3
cool.
years. Man, a dozen people in 3 years. That's a huge accomplishment.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, BreakSec's podcast, Breaking Security Podcast's official Twitter is at BreakSec, BRAKE Sec. You can follow me if you'd like on Twitter. I'm at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. We have a Facebook page. I spam tons of LinkedIn groups. We have a LinkedIn group of our own. We're on Tumblr. We're on a number of different radio networks like Stitcher and TuneIn Network and Player FM. We have an RSS feed. Our website is www.breakingsecurity.com. That's BRAKEING security.com. And, we have an RSS feed and we're in iTunes. So, by the way, I appreciate Dane and Sunny. And let's see, I had a whole list of people. We actually had some new people like doing Patreon on us. I was impressed and humbled and whatever.
That's awesome. I
know the people get value for the podcast, so they want to throw us some bucks or something. So let me see, where was that? So it makes us feel good to know that people appreciate what we're doing. Miss Sunny at Sunnyware, Nathaniel, Secure, Casey, and Dane. Those were the other folks. Dane was our newest person, and Sunny and all the rest of them were like our $5 sponsors. And I told them I would let them know that we appreciate them. So. That was it. That was a great discussion, about, I'm sorry, I didn't realize the guy's application went under. It's no longer around. So that was kind of sad. I didn't realize that, but, it was a great conversation about, logic flaws and responsible disclosure. That was another one. That was another great conversation about how to, disclose vulnerabilities properly. So. So if you guys have any questions or comments, also hit us up on Gmail. That's bds.podcast is our Gmail account. So bds.podcast@gmail.com. You can comments, questions, and concerns, or leave us some feedback on iTunes. So any closing thoughts, Mr. Betcher? I know we kind of that was kind of weird there at the end, but maybe during our last couple minutes here, I think responsible disclosure for me. And I know I just interrupted you. I'm sorry. It is really it's a double-edged sword. It's kind of, if you don't do it right, it can just go completely south on you, or, if they've got a bug bounty program, they feel comfortable in having those kinds of vulnerabilities being thrown out there. So it really depends on your audience and depends on your delivery of the disclosure. I think in the way you do that is very important.
Yeah, there could be a lot of emotion involved. It could be it could turn into a drama.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful there, because a lot of security people just I don't know, they're kind of
Well, they don't think of the business ramifications of it. They just see a vulnerability. Let's fix it. Hey, you've got something wrong with your site. And they're like, okay, you probably shouldn't even be trying to exploit things on our website like that. We should,
Yeah, that's the first thing, right?
Yeah. Or, your application has this and I fuzzed it and there's something naughty on it. And, it's like, well, we didn't really ask you to fuzz it for us. So our lawyer is going to be sending you a nice C&D. So, it can get really, really ugly once the lawyers start getting involved. So, which is why, I think Katie over at HackerOne, Miss Katie Masouras has suggested that if a company doesn't have a, bug bounty program, or if you found a vulnerability in an app or a website, to at least give them a contact so that they can, maybe advocate on your behalf if you want to go that route. So, All right. So I'm sorry. You did have a point, and I did interrupt you. So please feel
No,
free.
I pointed it out.
Oh, okay. Right on. All right. Well, I think we're done for the week. I'm on vacation right now, so that's pretty awesome. I appreciate that. And go back and feel free to hit some of our podcasts up. I mean, we've had some really great podcasts. We had Mr. Hector on a week or two ago. We had Dave Kennedy and Wim Remus from who just started their stints as the ISC squared board of directors. We've got lots of great people and podcasts on. Even back as far as 2014, we had some really great stuff on ITIL. We had a podcast with Kevin Johnson, our very first podcast. If you ever want to check that one out, that one's always great. So that was it for the week.
Very first, right?
He was like the second one. I think we interviewed Frank Kim about application developers or something, and that one went like 15 minutes, and that was like our very first interview. I think I recorded it with my MacBook of all things. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's really great. Our interviewing technique has hopefully gotten better during that time, but, yeah, so that we're done. I'm rambling. I'm sorry. So this was, breaking down security for this week. Please come back and join us again real soon.
Bye-bye.